Okay, Tales of the Arabian Nights. My poor box is way too beaten up. No, I didn't buy this back when West End was in existence. This was a KB Toy and Hobby special. Like with Avalon Hill games or SPI games, KB also got a big pile of West End games from somewhere or another. And they were all very cheap, a couple bucks each or whatever. To avoid starting the review just a little bit longer, I've been kind of frantically trying to play things ever since really I started getting a big pile of games this year all at once, and Triumph and Tragedy, a couple of things from Legion, Compass. I got some stuff from. I just everything came at once. The GMT sale, and I've been trying to be pretty good about being slower with games. I still have this tremendous problem of I'm running out of shelf space, but beyond that, I've got this. Wow, my list just bloated back out to 20 pages on BGG for the unplayed games. So there's been a certain level of, gee, we better get some of these done after I did a couple of big monsters this year that are real time eaters. So that's part of the reason this was done as well, is because somebody threw a big tip on it, even though it didn't have a lot of thumbs. It was this or Carcassonne, which had a lot of thumbs, but I don't think I add much to the discussion for it. Okay, so this particular game, I had a miserable time, especially, in the bottom half of the game. It was fun to explain the game, and I've found more and more, the more often I play it, the less I'm into playing it, because it does have a really limited amount of plays. Once you start to learn the paragraph book, it's no fun anymore. Once you see the same events coming up again and again, which is kind of the problem I have with, say, CDGs. You see the same events coming up again and again. Why do you want to keep playing it, Some people get into crafting, trying to play those events, trying to play the game by the events. But for me, an event-driven game doesn't really work that way. Part of it is the surprise of the events. So, in this, I found it never worked as a solo game, for reasons I went into in the final wrap, which is that it's just a paragraph game. It's just a choose your own adventure game. It doesn't use the paragraphs to set up anything terribly interesting. The earlier paragraph games did something different. The first Voyage of the Pandora sets up a planet that you're going to explore, and then the paragraphs determine different things that you have from that. Ambush, the scenarios are pre-baked, but the way they handle surprise in the game is to trigger it through the paragraph to push the storyline along. Stainless Steel Rat, a little less, but it sets up certain tactical situations for you. Now, I didn't play this by the legitimate solo rules, though. I did worse than that. I played a multiplayer game of it, Solitaire, which I find a little bit more interesting in the sense that there's some potential for some competition and interaction, etc. It's not just trying to beat some system in a game that's not purely competitive to begin with, or that I don't feel shines as a competitive game. So, obviously that's going to be a really miserable experience because I'm lacking what really makes the game cool, which is sitting around the table with a bunch of people who maybe are experiencing it for the first or second time and just getting a kick out of what's happening to their characters. And that's where this game is really good. Now, no matter what, when you approach some people with this game, they're going to think, oh, it sounds like a cool idea and everything. But then when they start playing it and they start realizing, well, the only way you can do really well in this is to know all of the paragraphs or to know a large quantity of them. That's the gripe that I have with, say, Paths of Glory or something. You have to know the deck of cards to be even able to, play it at all reasonably. Well, this you can play reasonably without because nothing too terrible happens to you. But maybe, if you're a very competitive person and you start playing this and you realize, wow, there's other people at the table who know this really well, and they could beat my pants off because they know which selections to make, which skills are the best and everything. I feel like those people are probably missing what the intention of this game is. I don't think anybody who's going to take this game as a terribly competitive exercise is going to enjoy it very much. Because it just becomes a memorization exercise. There's not really much you can actually do beyond knowing what picks to make on certain choices, what skills work with what picks, whatever. And honestly, you're trying to defeat the game if you do try to play by that kind of memorization, because the game's more an experiential one, and as such, it can be a lot of fun with the right group. That right group is usually what I found was, people who would play Talisman or something and very little else in the way of board games. They were the perfect people to introduce this to. They didn't want to play something that required a lot of strategy. They wanted a game where things happened to you. But instead of like Talisman, the things that happened here were actually kind of interesting and funny. It's not like, oh, look, I face a lion. Oh, I kill the lion. I store it for points. Oh no, it's a troll. I lose to the troll. Oh, I lose one of my counters. Talisman just strikes me as such a dull story happening, whereas this has, these interesting paragraphs, and you're actually weaving some, you're reading a story as you go with your choose your own adventure. That's actually of some interest and kind of fun to experience. Of course, the people I knew who were really into Talisman were like, oh, I always win because I take the pixie and then I have an infinite amount of... And it's like, seriously? You're excited about winning Talisman regularly? To me, that's like cleaning your fingernails or something. But okay, and that's where I feel with this, that this is really ultimately best enjoyed with people who are willing to be not terribly competitive about a game, willing to just enjoy the ride for what it's worth. And for that, it's pretty interesting. I've had a lot of fun with it. There's a reason this box is worn the way it is, and it's not just that I moved a decent amount and that it's a flimsy West End Games box, but it's that I actually brought it with me to people's houses a fair amount, or to coffee shops or something like that, and played it. And it's a nice little light game. It doesn't require a lot of thinking. It doesn't require a lot of effort on anybody's part. It does require being able to read, and reading aloud and kind of enjoying that. It kind of implies a little bit of role playing in it, I think, to really kind of spark the fun. Not real role playing like an RPG where you're really taking on the character, but a little bit of just kind of play acting in the parts in it. And within that, it's really a great game to play. But it has a limited shelf life for any particular group. And the only joy I got from it later on in my playing was, there's a couple new people that are going to play it. They'll have fun with it, I think, rather than, wow, I really am going to enjoy this. And I would continue exploring the game in the sense of, trying to take picks that I didn't know worked well in certain circumstances and stuff. I did less of that this time. I tried to pick things that I thought went rationally rather than irrationally with my characters, simply because I found that usually works fairly well no matter what. And that's actually what players usually will do. But I'll play around more with doing insane things, and usually that works out okay too. It's not like there's any real, there's nothing that horrible that can happen to you except you're stuck playing this game for a long time when you've got no chance and nobody else seems to really be trying to win, you know, and that's the same kind of problem that can happen to Talisman or a number of other games. I think it's important that somebody actually, that everybody does kind of try to win, because if you don't, the game becomes this miserably long affair. But otherwise, don't try too hard is what I'm saying. And also maybe don't try to stop somebody from winning, because that may just extend the game to no purpose. What we saw, somebody got stopped. Well, the person who wastes their turn kind of trying to stop somebody is probably not going to be in a better position to win. Of course, they didn't just see the game end without winning. Because I don't want to use the word lose, because I don't feel like you lose a game unless you've come in clearly in the worst position, or in a clearly worse position than kind of the average or whatever. I look at it from more the gambling standpoint or whatever. And, you might lose this game, you're in prison, blind, crippled, whatever. And that would be pretty bad. But in general, you advance and you get better throughout it. So I don't think anybody really loses it. That's just my... Anyway, I think it's a fantastic game for the right group of people. And I think it's a terrible game if you have more than... even if you have one competitive person, they're not going to spoil the whole game, but it's probably going to be bad for them. And... if you have more than one sitting at a table, even a table of 6, it's probably just going to be a horrible experience for everyone, because they're just going to be grousing about the thing the whole time. But even competitive people can get into the spirit of this. They just have to be willing to put that aside, and that's all. All right.